I was selfish because of alcohol. I wasn't selfish because I'm a selfish person. And alcohol takes over your life. When you get that deep, again, not for everyone. You know, I've got plenty of friends that can just drink on a Friday night. They can have one or two. It's great. It doesn't really steal from them, you know, the way that it stole from me. And so it stole everything from me. And now I get to have it all back and I get to realize how to rebuild. And the hardest part of getting sober is looking back and not just spending all your time in regret over what you missed.
We are Gold Ivy.
Our mission is to empower you to own and unleash your truth.
Stories of resiliency are gold, and ivy grows in hard places.
Those hard places are what creates space for light to shine through.
You decide what works for your daily life and how to transform our lessons into your gold.
This is Ivy Unleashed,
a Gold Ivy production. Who wants to know what I discovered that's an absolute game changer with my hormones, stress level, and quality of my sleep? I am not one to talk about supplements, but after learning all about magnesium, I have to fill you in. In May of last year, I tested my hormones and my doctor explained to me that most women are deficient in magnesium, how important magnesium is, and how the brand of magnesium matters. First, magnesium is involved in hundreds of biochemical reactions in your body. Cortisol regulation, take magnesium. Better sleep, magnesium. Muscle soreness and recovery, magnesium. Combat depression and anxiety, magnesium. The list of magnesium's benefits go well beyond those examples. I asked for the best brand of magnesium and my doctor said hands down, Smidge. She prefers Smidge because it's super clean and made in small batches. No fillers or common allergens and non-GMO. Smidge's magnesium is made with a premium form of magnesium called glycinate complex. After taking the 100 milligram capsule of Smidge Evening Magnesium every night for just a week, I noticed how much better I felt in the morning. Melatonin and other sleep aids can make me groggy or give me weird dreams. Smidge's magnesium has improved my energy levels, reduced my anxiety, and my digestive health has never been better. I do my best to take it every single night to keep reaping all the benefits. I'm telling you, Smidge Magnesium is a game changer. The majority of adult women are deficient in magnesium, and we don't want you to be one of them. To experience the health benefits of Smidge Evening Magnesium as soon as possible, go to getsmidge.com or find the link in the show notes and be sure to use code GOLDIVY10 for a 10% discount. That's getsmidge.com and code GOLDIVY10 at checkout and let us know how great Smidge Magnesium makes you feel as well. Let's talk about something foundational to your family's health that you might not even realize is an issue. Your cookware and bakeware.
That's right. We've all heard about clean eating, but what about clean cooking? For years, we've been told nonstick is the way to go for easy cleanup, but what if that convenience comes at a cost to your health?
Exactly. Our friends at Caraway have an origin story that really hit home for us. Their founder, Jordan Nathan, experienced what's called Teflon flu after accidentally overheating a traditional nonstick pan. It turns out it only takes 2.5 minutes for those pans to hit 500 degrees Fahrenheit and start releasing toxic chemicals.
And the problem is these aren't just any chemicals. We're talking about PTFE, also known as Teflon, and microplastics that can leach directly into your food that you're preparing for your family.
These are forever chemicals, folks. They enter the body and can take decades to leave, potentially leading to serious health risks like cancer or respiratory issues. Reading the research from the American Cancer Society and Good Housekeeping Institute was a wake-up call to realize what might be hiding in our kitchens.
And that's where Caraway comes in. They're on a mission to craft well-designed home goods that truly raise the standards of what you cook with. They've meticulously thought through every single detail, from the unboxing experience to how their products store in your home. The look, the feel. We're in a season where less is more. It's better for your health. It's better to look at. You've seen Caraway everywhere, and it's for a reason.
I went with the squareware and cookware set. Not only is it beautiful, but the relief I feel knowing the daily pancakes, pasta, and protein I'm heating up isn't causing harm to my kiddos is priceless.
Caraway has revolutionized kitchenware by offering a non-stick ceramic coating that's mineral-based. That means no toxic materials leaching into your healthy ingredients. It's easy to use, easy to clean, and you don't have to worry about those forever chemicals.
So if you're ready to remove harmful microplastics and toxic chemicals from your family's meals and truly elevate your cooking experience, it's time to switch to Caraway.
Head over to their website today. You can find the link in our show notes. And for a special thank you to our listeners, use code GOLDIVY at checkout for 10% off your Caraway products. Make the switch for a healthier you and a healthier home.
And now to this episode of the Ivy Unleashed podcast.
Welcome back to the Ivy Unleashed podcast. We have one of our favorites, reoccurring guest, Jeremy Stein. Jeremy, welcome back to Ivy Unleashed.
Thank you. I am so excited to be here and excited to see you two again. It's been a little while.
It has.
A lot has happened since we talked with you last.
A whole lot.
A lot. And we're always cheering for Jeremy and he does so many different things. First of all, he's a husband. He's a father of two. He's the host of Mainstreet Magic Podcast, which is this incredible podcast. If you need any tips about Disney, literally anything you would possibly need to know, this is your guy. And listen to Mainstreet Magic. But today we're going to talk about something different. Since the last time we had Jeremy on, he's been very open about his mental health, about addiction, and kind of being this high functioning person that is depending on alcohol to get through a lot. And so what we're going to talk about today is a very sensitive subject. It's a very vulnerable thing for Jeremy to talk about, but he's also writing a book right now. And he's spilling his guts in this book. And he's going to practice saying these things out loud with us today, too, because there's a lot of beauty in the book. I've read some of the draft already. But the book's name is Still Loud, Now Clear. So let's talk about, since we had you on, how we're at this point that you're writing a book and how addiction and mental health is kind of weaved in and why you decided to write this book.
Yeah, so it's funny if you go back to when I was on the podcast the last time with you guys, I had actually mentioned a point about my health and all, because I had gone through some weight loss and some different things I was trying to change about my life. And one of the things I remember talking about during that was slowing down on the drinking and what, my wife and I would go to Disney and just, that was kind of what we did a lot of there, was hitting bars and making friends and doing that type of stuff. So it's kind of funny because in that and in the thralls of that, I was probably the deepest I've ever been in addiction and alcoholism. And so it was all these small moments that started to add up. And the whole thing, and one of the reasons I'm trying to be so honest and open about this, one, I'm lucky to have a platform with the podcast. And I know it's Disney related, but the amount of people that, are familiar with this type of struggle, they know someone, they're going through it themselves, that have been able to reach out. So I thought, well, maybe I can actually, help some folks. And it's kind of to break that stigma of what addiction is, what an alcoholic is, because from the surface, and I'm sure you two included, would have never guessed that I was an alcoholic, that I was deep in addiction, and that I was struggling for years and years. The people in my own house didn't know it because I held it so close and kind of every day was just putting on a show, really. Mm-hmm. And so, it doesn't have to be this rock bottom that everybody imagines. It doesn't, an alcoholic doesn't have to be the person that's lying in a ditch, that has lost everything in their life, that's on the street, that looks disheveled. I'm an alcoholic, like, look at me. And this is what the average alcoholic usually that is probably walking around and looks like. So I thought it was important that if I was going to finally be honest and finally face this after really 2 decades of going through this, that I had to put it out to the world, because if I was going to go through all of this, if I was going to put the people that love me through all of this, then, in the end, I want 2 things. One is for me to have a better life, my family to have a better life, because I finally admitted it and I'm doing something about it. But 2 is to help someone else. If somebody is listening to this, or they end up reading the book, or they follow me on social, and they're just like I was, they know the signs. They're up at 3 a.m. awake, Googling, alcoholic, like taking the test right online, because they probably don't think maybe that they are one, or that they have an issue as deep as it might be. And so I kind of just want to bring that to light. Like, this is what it's really like. Mm-hmm. It's not what usually you see on TV. It's not rock stars going out and partying every night and all this type of stuff. A lot of times it is your neighbor, or it could be your coworker, or it could be, your husband or wife. In my case, it was, me with Rhonda. So I thought it was really important to be honest and kind of tell everyone, like, hey, I did it, and here's everything I dealt with and how, and you can do it too.
Mm-hmm. What was that first step that you took in admitting it, in asking for help? What did that look like?
Saying the words out loud, I have to get sober. Mm-hmm. That I had never, ever said that out loud. And a lot of the things that I'm probably going to say to you guys today, I've yet to say out loud. So pardon me if I get choked up and emotional, because I guarantee I will. It was always the conversation, was, hey, I need to cut back. Mm-hmm. Hey, I need to slow down. I won't drink this weekend. I won't do this, this, and this. And it was setting up rules. It was, well, I'll only drink on the weekend. I'm not going to drink on, what we'll call a school night anymore. My wife and I work for ourselves, so work night isn't the normal definition. So I was like, all right, school night, no drinking, no starting to drink before this time, and all these different bargains that I made with myself. And, that's not moderation. That's just an illusion, right? Mm-hmm. Like, that's not really what's going to happen. If you're constantly having to tell yourself to do those things, it's not working. So I'd never said the word sober. In my mind, I had said a million times, like, hey, if next month doesn't go better, because it was always next, right? Mm. It's always, well, next weekend, next month, dry January's coming. I'll deal with it then, and then I'd make it like 5 days through dry January. So it was just that point of finally saying it out loud. And it wasn't a rock bottom moment. It was probably a night that was like so many others, but it was this collection of moments that led up. And the example I'll use, if you scroll on TikTok, and maybe it's past that fad, but there was like this fad where people would take a watermelon and they put rubber bands around it, right? And you keep putting them on it, as many as you can. And finally, all it takes is one rubber band and the whole watermelon explodes. Like, I was the watermelon, and all these little moments were rubber bands. And for whatever reason that night, and I was drinking, we were out with people, and I'll be happy to tell you some about that if you want. And I just remember looking at Rhonda and saying, I have to get sober. Mm-hmm. And as soon as that word sober came out of my mouth, the back of my head was like, oh no, now we have to do it. Mm-hmm. There's no escape now. It's not, hey, I got to cut back, because there's always an escape. And so saying that out loud is really the first step. And I know that's kind of cliche. Like, the first step is admitting you have a problem, but I admitted I had a problem a long time ago to myself. So I would almost say is the first step is admitting you have a problem out loud or to someone else. That's really kind of the first step that'll get you started, because now there's accountability at least, and there's someone who at least is on the same plane. Because I was always, I'll slow down, in the back of my mind is, but if it doesn't work, I have to quit completely. And that's really scary. When your whole life depends on something. And the analogy I can use, and it sounds so messed up unless you are someone who understands it, is like, alcohol is my best friend. It was there in the good times. It was there in the bad times. Never argued with me. It never said, hey, that's probably enough. Alcohol was always up for one more drink. So to lose that is to kind of lose everything. And I ended up finding out alcohol was my operating system for everything I did. So wow. That's a hard thing to realize. Yeah. And once you do, that's where the real work begins. Because, and I keep saying this, because everyone's like, is it hard? Not physically drinking is the easiest thing in the world. Like, that's simple. Just don't do it. But not thinking about it and having to work on yourself and work on all the things that you had just been pushing down for 2 decades, that's where the work starts. And that's the thing that makes this super duper hard. And it was the reason that I had, held from getting actually sober for years and years.
It's so funny because you can feel that it's such an isolating thing. It's this mind game you have in your own mind, this conversation you're having with alcohol back and forth. Am I doing it? Am I not? This weekend? At what time? You're having all these conversations, but you also have a wife that loves you so much, and you have daughters that love you so much. And I know they've said things to be like, to help you try and quit, or it's been a conversation with them too. But ultimately, it has to be you that makes this decision and that changes that internal dialogue. And so what's that been like, your relationship with your wife and daughters in the midst of this, and how, you lean on them to help that self-talk a bit too?
Yeah, you put it perfectly, because it has to be you. Like, you have to be the one that finally does make the decision. And it's something else that I want people to kind of understand is, for every good reason, Rhonda or my girls would get mad at me for drinking. Every good reason in their mind. And they had no reason to think otherwise. They just thought was, hey, he doesn't really care. He is, we've asked him to slow down or stop drinking so much. He continues to do it. It's, like I'm the problem. And I understand that is part of it, but alcohol is also a major problem. And so when it just comes into your life like that, at no point did I ever wake up and be like, oh man, I'm going to try and destroy my life today. Like that would be awesome. No, I woke up every morning saying, I'm not going to drink tonight. And if I do, it could destroy my life. And then a certain time rolls around and a trigger hits, a craving hits, and it's kind of all you know. And so, we had never, I think, had the conversation that we needed to. I mean, my girls, the poor things are, they're 15 and 17 years old. This isn't a conversation they should have to have with their dad. Mm-hmm. And for me to be open and honest with them and Rhonda in the past was super hard because, again, it was admitting that I had to change, and that scared the hell out of me. So there were times that, I'd sat down with the girls after an incident or something. And one thing I do want to be clear, at least in my case, is incidents for me were not violent. They were not destructive in a kind of, physical or mental way. For the most part, it's not like I was berating my kids, and getting drunk with a bottle of whiskey and a wife beater, yelling at them or something, getting the police called. It was a quiet violence, I could say. And I wouldn't realize until after how volatile I was all the time, and I mean, you guys know me well enough from the past. I'm a chill person. I'm pretty relaxed. I'm usually kind of, other than doing a podcast for, 8 years, I'm usually the guy kind of in the background. And so it's hard to be honest with those people that you love about something like that. And now the honesty, once I opened that door, it's incredible how much more can flood out, and because there were so many nights that Rhonda, came home, and whether I had been drinking that night and she was unaware or I hadn't, but I was still just almost mentally hungover from the day before, whatever it may have been, we didn't talk, we didn't share. I wasn't very open. I wasn't very honest with her because I was so afraid of getting caught. That was the thing. It was almost rehearsing lines in your head just so it sounds normal. It was, us maybe being out, and maybe we both, it's on a Friday night and we're having dinner and we're having some drinks, and, mine were always exponentially more than hers, and most of those she didn't know about. But it's taking notes in your phone, so the next morning when you wake up, you can refer to them, so you don't make an ass of yourself when you say something that you guys had a full discussion about the night before. And so I held so much in and just didn't say anything to my whole family and friends because of that, because it was constantly putting on a show. I didn't want to get caught. And now that I kind of caught myself and I opened up about this, it's so much easier to be honest and to say things. I mean, Rhonda and I always had a really good relationship other than alcohol. That was the only thing that really brought anything between us. Other than that, our marriage has been incredible. It's always been wonderful. We love each other very much. And I was at a point where I was like, there's no way that two people could love each other more. And now I'm like, wow, they can, because we're being completely honest. And for the first time, it's weird because she's getting to see the real me, but I'm kind of getting to see the real me too. It's not like some of these stories you see. There's an artist that I just came across, Cameron Whitcomb. He was on America's Got Talent. He struggled with addiction and was addicted when he was 13 years old. And in his later years, through being a teenager to the time he got to like 20, I think he's like 23 now. He's already lived a lifetime of addiction and sobriety and all this type of stuff. And you just start to hear all this honesty and stuff and people like this in their voices. And it just makes, connects so much, and it makes you want to do the same with everyone around you. And, opening up that door, saying those words, I have to get sober. And the other thing, saying out loud, was, I need help. I can't do this alone. Unfortunately for me, because I'm stubborn and stupid, it took about a year of sobriety, of me white knuckling my way through, of just putting my head down and beating myself up through it, because I didn't get the help I needed in that first year. And that's another thing that I want to kind of let people know, and this book to be about, is, the book's very much about how I got sober, but it's also about how I did it in that first year in all the wrong ways. And so that hopefully people can learn from that, because everything was driven by fear. It's fear of having to talk to a therapist, of having to go to a doctor, of walking into an AA room and admitting in front of a group of strangers, that you're an alcoholic, and discussing things that you haven't even discussed with your own family. And it took me a year to start to get to all of that. That clarity finally opened up. And it's the other thing I want people to understand that might be starting to get sober to go through is like, it sucks, man. It's the hardest thing ever. It sucks. And it's not about shakes or physical withdrawals. I was fortunate that I didn't have major withdrawals or anything like that. But the mental withdrawals and what it has done, on my mental health has just been insane to figure out over the past year. So it's that other thing, letting people know, like, it's not easy. Day one doesn't bring a bunch of clarity. Month one doesn't bring a bunch of weight loss. Month two doesn't exactly bring better sleep. There's a lot of things that online will promise you. Well, they need to, because they want you to get sober, right? If I tell you that the first 3 to 6 months sucks, who's going to want to do that, right? Because it's hard to look past that 3 or 6 months. So it's just letting people know, like, you're going to have to do it. So admit it, ask for help, and then just do the work in whatever way it makes sense to you.
I think a lot of people, just when you think about life and being a parent and all of the responsibilities and the roles, it's easy to just pick up the glass and to numb and to feel okay for a short amount of time, right? You're chasing that next high. And you mentioned that hurting felt easier than healing. So I'd love for you to elaborate on that, because I think a lot of people listening can relate to that. Keeping the flu and common cold out of your household is important whether you're 5, 35, or 95. And we're going to tell you the easiest and most delicious way to do just that. It's with All Things Elderberry, a woman-owned business that has all-natural, vegan-friendly, and gluten-free elderberry products.
And when we say products, we mean a variety of delicious and beautiful products, not just for you, but for your entire household to get an immunity boost. If we had to pick our favorite product, I'm going with organic elderberry gummies. My kids are obsessed. We're trying to avoid sickness from school and make sure they can participate in their sports. So they take one every morning before they brush their teeth. They think the gummies taste like a mix of grape and cotton candy. I tried them too, and I can see why they ask for them every day. I love that they're boosting their immune system at the start of their day.
My favorite All Things Elderberry product is the elderberry green tea paired with the elderberry honey. The green tea gives me a midday boost, and the honey gives the tea extra sweetness. I also put the honey in my morning coffee instead of creamer. So good. All Things Elderberry is my solution for staying healthy before traveling, avoiding frequent colds and sinus infections, really just maintaining my health all year round.
What sets this brand apart from the others is there are no artificial additives in All Things Elderberry. Their elixir is made with organic, Missouri-grown elderberries, raw honey, and whole spices.
Elderberries not only help with immune support, but may also slow the aging process with their powerful antioxidants, improve skin health, and can shorten the duration of severity of colds and flu.
Visit allthingselderberry.com to explore their full range of immune-supporting products. Stay healthy and feel your best naturally. Use our code GOLDIVY at checkout for 15% off your first order. That's code GOLDIVY at checkout for 15% off your first order.
We're coming at you with important information, warnings, and a solution. Sharing health and wellness gold with you is what we do. And so when we learned alarming information about devices that we routinely use, and we know you do too, we have to share it with you.
What most people don't realize is that the electronic devices we're using, cell phones, Wi-Fi, laptops, and Bluetooth, emit electromagnetic fields, or EMFs. The devices we're holding by our brains, on our skin, by our reproductive parts are emitting EMFs, and prolonged exposure to EMF radiation has been associated with potential health concerns, including neurological effects, impacts on reproductive health, and sleep disturbances.
Those studies alone are a cause for pause. but also the International Agency for Research on Cancer that operates under the World Health Organization has classified non-ionizing EMFs produced by electronic products like cell phones, smart devices, and tablets a possible human carcinogen. Yikes.
And our solution? Safe Sleeve. Safe Sleeve anti-radiation products are designed to give you peace of mind of knowing you and your devices are protected while making your devices even easier to use. All of their anti-radiation products incorporate their lab-tested shielding technology that can block over 99% of RF and 92% of ELF radiation. And that's important because the vast majority of products that claim to block EMF radiation either don't have any testing at all, or they only block a small portion of the harmful frequencies.
We absolutely love the sleek look of these stylish products. They come in a variety of styles and colors. For our phone cases, I picked black, Andrea picked tan, and they include a built-in wallet with RFID protection and a magnetically detachable inner case. They're also anti-radiation products for tablets, iPad, and laptops.
We are pumped because we have been looking for a brand to help protect ourselves and our loved ones from this radiation for months. My kiddos have the iPad cases. Searching for a brand with stylish phone cases, colorful iPad colors, and functional headphones for our workouts so that we can enjoy our devices but also not have to worry about how they're harming us.
And without a doubt, it's time to protect ourselves. Grab your Safe Sleeve phone case today and any of their other groundbreaking products at safesleevecases.com and use our code GOLDIVY for 15% off.
Yeah, I don't know why my default system for so long has just been to hurt, and to be very self-conscious. And I've never had a lot of self-esteem. I've got major imposter syndrome. I grew up with the best childhood you could imagine. That's the other thing to kind of break the stigma. I didn't come from alcoholic parents. My dad quit drinking when my brother Alan, who's 3.5 years older than me, when he entered middle school. And not like my dad was drinking a bunch. I remember maybe, they'd have a gathering and he'd have a beer or two and my mom might have a glass of wine, but alcohol wasn't really in our house. And my dad stopped when my brother hit middle school because he didn't want to be an influence, right? So he didn't want to be like, hey, I'm drinking, so it must be okay, for my kids to do it. And we see that and all. And so we didn't dabble a lot with alcohol. I didn't really in high school, but it wasn't until I left and I went to my first year at college away. I went to Towson University for a semester and I just went nuts. I just went wild. And I don't know if it was because alcohol just wasn't really talked about in a way we knew though that we shouldn't have it. Right. So by the time I got access to it in college and I was on my own, was just like, wow, this is awesome. And my brother, if anybody knows my brother, Alan, he's as good as he is at everything now. He's been that way ever since I've known him. He's always been the one great at sports and school and all this stuff. And I always felt a need to live up to him. Not because of anything he or my parents did. It was just my own, like, hey, look at all these things my brother's doing. And I'm just known as Alan's little brother, So I think I got to college and it was like, man, like I can kind of be the star of my own show if I want now, because nobody knows who Alan Stein is here. It's just me. And so I partied. And on the drive up, I did community college for 1 year. Then I went to Towson because that's where all my friends went. Because I grew up in Maryland and everybody that went to our high school either went to Towson or they went like down south somewhere. And so I ended up going there for a semester. I remember on the drive up, my dad didn't talk to me about sex. He didn't talk to me about alcohol. He just said, if they were paying, because I've got two of the greatest parents in the world, always have provided everything for me. They still do to this day. If I need anything, I can call them at a moment's notice. And he just said, if you fail one class, I'm going to pull you out. And so I failed several. I drank every night. I got to a point I was drinking a fifth of vodka a night, chasing it with like Kool-Aid and stuff. And I started to kind of become the guy, like, it'd be a Friday morning and I'd be, stumbling out of my dorm room and walking somewhere. And I'd see people from the night before that were like, oh, hey, it's Jeremy. And I was kind of the party guy. And I was like, cool, like I'm being known now. And then I fell in love there. I had a girlfriend in high school that was just a horrible relationship pretty much throughout. And I would find that I'd start chasing kind of these mentally abusive relationships. Because again, I don't know why I didn't feel like I had the worth to be with them. So it was more, again, it became that I can either be alone, which sounds so much harder than being with someone, even if they kind of treat me like shit, right? Like that just sounds easier because I'm with someone. I don't have to be alone. And I've always needed a distraction. I've got major ADHD. Anybody listening will probably tell as I trail off and go in crazy directions. So please keep me on track. So it was just, I think it was those moments of just then having that girlfriend and going, all right, well, she kind of treated me like crap. And one moment would be the highest of highs. And then the next was like the lowest of lows. And there were these mental games that she always played. And of course, everyone saw it but me. So I tied myself to drinking, to this girlfriend and all of that. It was during that time, you know, and this is where writing the book has been so good, because I've sat for so long and been like, what the hell's wrong with me? Why am I this way? And as I start to go back, I just find these little notches of things that are kind of like, oh, well, those kind of just start to add up. And the fact that I never faced them, they just piled on. And that drove me into being this, you know, alcoholic and all, I feel like. And so like during that time we had, this guy, Billy, lived, 2 doors down from us. Like we had these suites that connected a bathroom, and then he was the next one over. Nicest guy. He was kind of local from the area. And I used to sit in my room and I'd play guitar and I'd leave the door open and stuff because I wanted people to like come in and be like, hey, look, it's Jeremy. He's cool. I'm like, yay. And so he would come in all the time. And it was right around the time that Good Riddance by Green Day had just come out. And Andrea will probably get more connection to some of the music and pop culture I reference, I think, than Brooke. But so that song had just come out. It was easy to play. So I would play that and Billy would stop in and he would sing along and it'd be great. And we were maybe halfway through the semester and I was at the Towson Town Mall and I ran into Billy and a buddy and we were talking about the weekend before and we'd all been out drinking and stuff. And he was telling us some story about him drinking and all, and we were all laughing. And the next day in the dorm room, and I hear screams from his roommate, and Billy had hung himself in his closet. And so I had to run. I left and I ran out and I had to find either security or police or somebody who knew what to do. And so they came in and, you know, all that happened. And within a week, you know, I'm 18 years old. It's my first time ever away from home. And I got to go to a funeral, you know, this kid that I just met, who in my eyes lit up the world. I mean, you never saw Billy without a smile, you know, and this light in his eyes. And so I didn't go home because I was like, if I go home, I don't know if I'm going to be able to come back. So I borrowed, you know, a shirt and tie and pants from whoever I could find, because you don't pack a suit to go to college. You know, you're not expecting to go to a funeral in the first 2 months. And, you know, went to the funeral and all. And it was kind of that moment where like, man, like here is somebody who seemed like the happiest kid I'd ever met, but he was really struggling and dealing with something. And I don't know what it was. And so that kind of just went by and we went on, you know, and I think it was all those things that started to add up. And I just, no matter what I did, drinking just seemed to be the outlet. You know, I moved out on my own. I broke up with the college girlfriend. I dropped out, went back home. Then I moved in with her before moving in with a buddy of mine, Phil, and his girlfriend. And I'd always played music, and I played guitar in high school and played in some garage bands like every single kid in the late 90s does. And Phil and I ended up reconnecting because I went to high school with him and his girlfriend, Kathleen. And so we reconnected and we moved in together just outside of Baltimore. We lived together for about 3 years. And we, about every 10 to 12 months, we'd have to move apartments. We'd find something cheaper, whatever. And Phil and I started to play music out in Baltimore. And so we would go usually Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. We had open mic nights that we would go out and play at. And then on the weekends, we were either trying to book some sort of show or just play anywhere we could. And, you know, we weren't making money. We were just having fun. And we found places that would say, you know what, we'll give you an open bar tab if you guys will host the open mic. Sweet. That's great. So, you know, we're in our early 20s. We're playing music every night. We're drinking until 2, 3 in the morning, and then going to the diner, going home. And then I'm getting up and going to work at 7. And it was like, you know, for a kid that played in garage bands, all you want to do is be a rock star, right? Well, this was my only way to kind of be one. So it was just constant of just that chaos of going out. And Phil, who was my best friend for so many years, was just about the same as my college girlfriend. So it's funny that what I looked for in a girlfriend at the time, I ended up with a best friend because he was as volatile as could be. You know, one minute we're just laughing and all. And the next minute, like something set him off and he's throwing a chair at my face,
Wow.
or we never knew what was going to happen when we went out with Phil. So it was just constantly just feeding that chaos of just, this is exciting. I was single, so I didn't have anybody. So I just needed something. And Phil was kind of that something. And we went and we played like crazy. And, we drifted apart when I moved to Florida. I met Rhonda. I moved to Florida. And then it was 2016. And Phil had called me a couple months earlier. We would send text messages every once in a while, or like a song would come on that's new. And I would send him, because we used to play like the weirdest songs. Like we would do covers of anything we could find just for fun. And so I would text him and be like, hey, this would be a great song. And then it was November of 2016. I'm sitting on my couch. I'm looking at Facebook. Phil had called me a couple months earlier. I didn't answer because I thought I was too busy, and I didn't call him back because I hate talking on the phone. And then I read from his brother that Phil had passed away the night before. And it's like, oh my God. And so as I go back and I start to put this book together, I think it's all these things. So instead of me going, and my immediate fear was, man, Phil and I, we drank a lot for a couple of years, like every night almost for 3-4 years. I wonder if that's what did it. And so all of a sudden this fear came over me. Like, did drugs kill Phil? And what does that mean for me? But instead of just facing that and thinking, what do I need to do? I just kept drinking. And so as that continued, it's just like I kept feeding this pain where it became easier than dealing with it. And in some ways I'm not wrong, because the first year of sobriety was probably harder than the last 5 years of addiction. So it's understandable that you don't want to face that, but I'm telling you, what's on the other side is absolutely incredible.
And that's what's hard, is that it is the long game. Like you said, it can be a tough year. It can be a tough 6 months. And who wants to hear this is going to be hard and this is going to suck? Okay, so I should do it, or And Brooke and I have both played with giving up alcohol, not drinking at all for months, 75 hard, all those things. Mm-hmm. And I do think when you haven't had like a full-blown addiction where, you rely on it daily, that you can actually get little benefits faster, I think. Yeah. Like just experimenting with the last year with me, I noticed like a night of drinking will kind of make me foggy for a couple days, and I'm still functioning and I'm still like happy. But just from really taking a big break from it just recently, it does steal your joy. Like you can't actually access like this true happiness. Like it's almost like there's this little cloud, and it takes like 4 or 5 days for that to actually disappear. And so I think, everybody listening, based on what you're at with your relationship with alcohol, maybe you don't drink, maybe you drink a lot. I think it's trying to figure out like, what is it that I'm covering up? What is it that I'm avoiding? Because alcohol does help that temporarily, right? Turn off the brain, And so I'm curious, now that you feel like you're more on the other side of it, you had that tough digging through it and writing this book. What are the benefits that you've seen? Like what is different now when you're experiencing your day-to-day versus what it was like before?
Yeah, I mean, the clarity finally comes, like what I would call that fog, that you say you if you drink now, you might have it for 4 or 5 days. Like I was in that constantly. I call it the static, because I'm just trying to reference everything to music, because I'm writing a book that ties sobriety to music. So I kind of have to do it, but it's kind of that static. It's just the constant, switching of stations and never finding the song you want to land on. Right. And so that's how it was. And so it was constant. So, after a year and finally a clarifying moment for me, you do get that clarity. For me, weight loss did not come with it. I've gained 20 to 25 pounds because I love sugar and I love ice cream. And, and that's one of those things. For the first 3 months, you're like, okay. I quit drinking. I'll allow myself sugar and ice cream. And then for 6 months, you're like, well, I'm like a year and a half. And I'm like, okay, ice cream is still better than alcohol, but it's still one of those things to figure out. But, for me now, it's seeing all the little things that I missed. In the way that I said, like, it's not like when I was drinking, I was an angry drunk and I was getting in fights and DUIs and all. I've never been arrested. I've never had a police officer approach me somehow about being drunk or anything. I don't know how that's happened, but it's now seeing the things that I missed even when I was there, because while I wasn't an angry drunk, I didn't get in fights, I didn't get DUIs, I wasn't present even in the moments that I was physically there. My brother's big on be where your feet are, play present. And I wasn't doing that. I didn't miss my kids' recitals. I didn't miss their soccer games when they played. I didn't miss birthdays. I didn't miss almost anything physically, but mentally, most of the time I wasn't there. If it was that, one of the girls just say it was going to be their 10th birthday and they wanted to go to a jump house or something, I was looking up to see if a bar was there, and while I'm there, it's just the constant game of when is the next drink? Where is the next drink? Can I do it without anyone noticing? Because they've already seen me have this many and I know that they're watching. I know that they're counting, and they're probably not, but that's what your mind thinks. You think you're the center of attention about everything that revolves around alcohol at that moment. And everybody's looking for your secrets. And so you just have so many of them. But it brings you that moment. Like I can sit now, and Lacey just got her learner's permit. Right. And so for a year, because in Florida, you get it at 15, you have to have it for a year, then you can get your license. So for a year, an adult over 21 has to be in that passenger seat while she drives. It's going to be me most of the time, getting her to and from school and to and from work and all. And the difference in just sitting in that chair, in that passenger seat, compared to the way I did it when Kaylin was learning the same thing, and I was, actively in addiction and all, is light and day, because I can take everything in. I can notice it. I'm not looking at, all right, it's 4:00. We're probably going to drive till 5:00. That means that when I get home, I can go ahead and pour a drink by 5:15. I can do this, this, and this. You're just there. And that's where kind of a lot of that clarity comes from. The other thing is just finding that you start to enjoy routines. We have a very weird schedule and household. We are definitely not your typical American family of husband, wife, and two teenage daughters. My wife's a hairdresser. She works Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday for 12 hours a day, those 3 days. Right. So during that time, because I work for myself, and my brother and doing the podcast and all, I work kind of those same days. And then, we kind of have these breaks on the weekend and all. And it's being able now to truly be there for all those moments that you missed, even when you were there. There's a line, and my book references lyrics throughout from the bands and the music and all that literally saved my life, because I wouldn't be here without my girls and my music. Like I had about 2-3 years ago, or 2 or 3 years before I got sober, I had sat with myself and just accepted that I was probably going to be dead by 50. I mean, I knew it in my mind. I'm like, look, the direction I'm going only gets worse and worse. And I have to accept the fact that this is probably going to kill me. And that's how deep I was, where I didn't think I could face the pain of getting sober. And somehow that seemed easier. And the only thing that kept me going was, look, when I'm gone, I'm gone. It doesn't affect me anymore. But I can't leave Rhonda and my girls. How selfish is that, And so having that clarity now of just putting them first, I was selfish because of alcohol. I wasn't selfish because I'm a selfish person. And alcohol takes over your life. When you get that deep, again, not for everyone, I've got plenty of friends that can just drink on a Friday night. They can have 1 or 2. It's great. It doesn't really steal from them, the way that it stole from me. And so it stole everything from me. And now I get to have it all back, and I get to realize how to rebuild. And the hardest part of getting sober is looking back and not just spending all your time in regret over what you missed. Mm-hmm. It's starting to reframe for that first I can say it was 475 days. And I'll tell you the moment in a bit of when everything changed. And at 475 days is when I finally started to see kind of the light at the end of the tunnel, and that this was worth it, and everything that I was gaining back. That's when I opened up Facebook in the morning and I looked at photos in my memories, I didn't get sad anymore. I started to get happy, because I started to look and I went, man, here's a photo from 10 years ago of us at Disney, and I'm in the pool with my girls. And I can see it in my eyes. I can see kind of the lifeless, the dullness, the whatever it is. But in their eyes, they're bright, they're smiling. And so where I used to look at it and be like, man, I missed that moment. I reframed it and I was like, but they didn't. That's what they remember. They remember being with their dad. They remember being in the pool. It didn't matter what I was going through at that moment, mentally, whatever it may be, whether I was drinking or not at that moment, it doesn't matter, because what they'll look at that photo and remember is good. And that's where I started to reframe and go, that's how I need to start seeing things. And that's how I need to start seeing them. And it's funny because I'll be in the car sometimes. Lacey, oh, poor thing. She's so much like me. Like when you see yourself in your kids, it's so incredible. But sometimes you see the things that worry me. And I don't want her to have the same struggles that I did. But now there's moments where I'm with her and she doesn't talk a lot. You really got to get things out of her. She's got to be in a mood. She's just like her dad. But I kind of see her glance at me now. And I know the look because she's me. And it's kind of this look of, he's here.
That's so sweet.
That's worth the 475 days.
It is. It's worth all of it. Mm-hmm. It is. But it's hard to see on day one.
Yeah. And I'm thinking
really hard to see.
Throughout the choice to continue night after night to stay sober. It's about to be her birthday. You shared before we started recording, you're going to Disney, where there will be alcohol. When you're around people, I'm sure these past 500, whatever day you're at right now, those days you've been around people that have been drinking. You've been around alcohol. What has helped you stay sober in those moments?
So one of the things that I feel I did wrong was the moment I got sober, I didn't change a single thing about my life except I removed alcohol, which means no plans changed, which means the plans I had the weekend after I got sober stayed. The cruise that we were going on a month and a half after I got sober stayed. The birthday 2 weeks later for a friend and 40th that she rented an Airbnb in Orlando, I kept those plans. And she said, hey, if you don't want to come, I understand. And at the time, again, I thought that was strength. I thought it was like, look at me. I'm going to be around alcohol. I'm not going to need it. And I didn't cave. And every moment of it was miserable because, again, I thought I'm going to be strong. I'm not going to change my life. And my thought was, if I take myself out of what I'm used to for just say 2 or 3 months, it's going to be harder to throw myself back in. Now I'm realizing that maybe not have been the case. One thing that helped me a ton, and I know in the world of sober and sobriety, a lot of people, I feel like it's 50-50. Non-alcoholic options have helped me a ton. Mm-hmm. A lot of people don't want to do it. They feel like it's cheating. Some, yes, they have 0.5% or less alcohol. But I think like sodas, if you ate like a banana peel, like it really isn't anything. So it's not really something, but there's a lot of people that feel like it's cheating, or they're afraid that having the taste of a beer, even if it's non-alcoholic, will set them off to the real thing. And that could have happened to me, and I took that chance, but I started making sure that I had something when I was going to be in those situations. So if we were going to go out somewhere, I started going, Disney, which we go to all the time. It was really hard to go back there and not be drinking, because it was just like, it's habitual at that point. You're like, oh, there's the place. You just start walking towards it. And you're like, wait, we can't go in there. And if we are, we got to do something else. And so I made sure I looked at menus, said, do they have any sort of non-alcoholic alternatives? Whether it's a non-alcoholic beer, if it's some sort of mocktail or zero proof cocktail. And so when everybody else would order their beer, I'd get like my non-alcoholic beer. And it really did help. Because for me, what I started to find, and I find now, and I think that's where a lot of the eating comes from, and my snacking and all is I need something. Like I need constant something happening. If I'm working, even when I'm sitting writing this book and reading it, I have music on in the background, which most people would distract them beyond belief, but I can't really sit in that silence still. It's something that I'm still working on. So I constantly just need something going on. And I feel that way with just having something in my hand. There's a lot, you go, all right, well, that person's a social drinker. Okay, well, yeah, they need to feel involved. They need to feel like they fit. That's why they have it in their hand. You can take sips. It's just something. It's tangible. And so that helped me a lot through all of that, is having those non-alcoholic alternatives. And what I found is on a Tuesday at 5, when I'm like, this is when I would drink. This would be a great time to drink, right? I'll have a non-alcoholic beer and I'll have that one. And I'm like, all right, I'm good. That's enough. And it's funny because sometimes like I might be, I might drop Lacey off at work and I'm coming home and I'm like, you know what? When I get home, I think I'm going to sit and have a non-alcoholic beer. And I'll get home and like an hour go by and I'm like, oh, I forgot to get one. You're like, okay. So I think it's part of having that. It's like, it's kind of the safety net that helps me feel still involved. The other thing is, I mean, you got to have people around you that love you and care about you and are just as serious about your sobriety as you are. You know, one of my best friends, Rob, I've known him since second grade. We grew up in Maryland together. And a couple of years after I moved to Florida, he moved his family down. They live 0.7 miles from us in the same neighborhood. I've known him. I've known his wife, Tina, since middle school. I got ordained and performed their wedding 20 years ago now, as of July. And so Rob and I, for being best friends, we are not the type to sit down and just have it out and be emotional with each other. And that first birthday, I got sober in March, and then it was September. And that first birthday was really hard. Like, again, because I was stubborn, I planned a night out. I got all my friends. So let's go down to St. Augustine, right? Let's bar hop. I'll find non-alcoholic options. It was miserable. I hated it. But that Sunday, we went out Saturday night, and the next day, Rob and Tina came over, and I was making dinner or something. And their kids are like the same ages as our kids. And our youngest, Lacey, is best friends with their oldest, Cassidy, and stuff. So they came over, and Rob just walked in the door with a 12-pack of Biro, which Tom Holland, who's been sober for a couple of years now, started this non-alcoholic beer called Biro. And so he just walks in with the 12-pack, and he's just like, "Hey, man, I didn't know if you had tried these yet." And I had, but I was like, "Oh yeah, let's," so I opened one up. He opens up one, and he still drinks. He drinks beer, but he opens one up and he drinks it. And they left a card behind, and I open it up, and it's happy birthday and all this good stuff. And it's a gift card for Disney. And I'm like, oh, this doesn't write how much is on it. So I go online and I look how much. It's $189. And I was 189 days sober. And so it's those things that you're just like, having those people around you, having the options to know that you're not going into the belly of the beast, that maybe there is a non-alcoholic beer, or there is just something, whether it's picking up something else. A lot of mornings now, oddly, a lot of my tastes have changed in certain things. Like, for some reason, coffee, I just don't care for it anymore all of a sudden. And so, like, every morning, just because I still need something, I have this concoction I make. It's like a Propel, and I put a tea bag in it, and I put a little simple syrup, and I take some fresh mint leaves and basil that we have in a garden we started out back, and I shake it all up in a shaker and pour it over ice. And it's just kind of this morning something for me. And it's the same type of thing I might do at night now. It's just having something tangible in my hand that doesn't make me reach for the thing that was basically just killing me for decades. So,
yeah.
Wow, I love it. That's such a good, like you said, people say that it's cheating or whatever, but like, that's their own journey, right? This is what works for you. And I think that is such a huge thing to hit home with alcohol, is everybody has their own, there's a lot of themes that we probably all have with alcohol that we feel after we have too many, or, whatever. But you have to decide what works best for you. Like you said, it's keeping you from the thing that was making you suffer for so long. And so if this is what it is, also, that sounds great with the mint leaves in there. I want to have that for breakfast.
So good.
So good.
That was one of the things we did. So we started a garden out back. I talked about it for years. Well, now a weekend comes and you're like, what the hell do I do at the weekend if we're not at Disney, right? So it's like Friday nights now. I mean, for a year, it took me Friday nights to go, man, it's really nice sitting on the couch and like watching a movie with my wife, with nothing else, and we used to do that, but alcohol was involved. And again, that was Rhonda, having a drink or two, and then me saying, oh, I forgot something in the garage, and sneaking something out of there, or, hiding something in my office or whatever it may be. And like, I'd make these excuses like, oh, I got to do something real quick, and I'd get up and come in the office all pouty and stuff. And it's like, oh, have a little drink. And so it was all those types of things. But it's insane how everything they say kind of comes true, but it does. Like you said, it's all in your own journey and it's all in your own way. And I just don't want anyone to get discouraged with their journey. And I don't want them to compare it to other people's journeys. Because that's another thing. Finally, after a year, I went to an AA meeting, and I if you know me, that is a nightmare. You walk in a room of 30 people I've never met. I have to say out loud, it's the only requirement, I'm Jeremy, I'm an alcoholic, when they get around to you and you introduce yourself. Other than that, you can stay quiet the whole time if you want. You can listen, you can observe, and that's what I've done. But yeah, I mean, that was another interesting thing, is then sitting in that room and looking around I looked like more of an alcoholic than anyone else in the room, because I've been growing a beard and it's kind of scraggly, and I had on a band t-shirt, and I've got tattoos, and, I had my hat on, and I'm just kind of hunkered in the back, and everybody else looks like my dad, my grandma, my neighbor, my uncle, my, friend, like all these people that just look so normal to be there. It was an interesting thing, but that's another one I would say is I didn't think my journey needed AA. I didn't, it was another stubbornness thing. I don't want to be in front of people. I don't want to, have to talk about it when I don't feel like I want to talk about it and all. And I had a acquaintance that I met through my brother years ago, and he happened to post on Facebook. He was 4 years sober. And so I just messaged him and I was like, hey man, congratulations. I'm on my own journey, a little over a year or so now. And he was like, that's great, man. Do you have a good sponsor? I said, well, I haven't been to AA yet. And he's like, I don't want to preach. He said, but you need to go to one. It's like, it's the best thing I ever did. He's like, it's the only club. I love that he said it's the only club nobody wants to be in, but you never want to leave once you are. And I haven't said any other words in there. I've been for a couple weeks or so. I haven't said any other words than Jeremy, alcoholic. I don't even say that I'm Jeremy. I'm an alcoholic. It comes to me and I can just muster up Jeremy, alcoholic. Everybody says, hi, Jeremy. And you go on to the next person. But being in that room with those people is incredible. And that's where I learned to not play the comparison game. There's a woman in there, and it's Alcohol Anonymous, so I probably shouldn't say too much. But who has been through struggles I can't even believe, through a husband that's passed away, a previous husband that, abused their children. I mean, all these things. You're sitting back and you're not being like, she's got every reason to be an addict and to try and hide and run from pain. What reason do I have? And then as I just started to sit, I'm like, it doesn't matter. Whatever your pain is, whatever your grief is, it's yours. And it's important to you. It doesn't matter what anybody else is going through. I've got somebody who got sober after I did. He's a podcast listener. He reached out to me and he was like, hey man, you've been an inspiration. Cause I do talk about it on the podcast a lot. And he's like, I'm calling it quits. I'm getting sober. And I saw within a week or two, I could just see like, he seemed like all the textbook sober people, that clarity, and he was losing weight and he was just as happy as could be. And I was almost angry. Like, that's not fair. Like, I didn't get that after a couple weeks. Why do you? And then again, I was like, it doesn't matter. Like, this is my battle. It doesn't matter what I've lost, what I've gone through, what I haven't lost, and what I haven't gone through. This hurts for me. It's my pain. It's real. And so I have to just believe it and I have to accept it and I got to face it. And I think that's another just a thing that's just so important. Just don't look at what others are doing. It's important to be in the room with them because it does help you show appreciation and gratitude. I can sit back and go, hey, I get to go home to my incredible wife, and this person has lost multiple husbands. This person over here is talking about how they've had 2 DUIs and they lost their job and they can't get work now. And on paper, that looks a lot worse than what I'm dealing with. Just some sad boy who had some, shitty girlfriends when he grew up, and some of his friends happen to pass away. Like, you start to just think that you're not worthy of saving or of this redemption or making your life better. And you are. Yeah, plain and simple, you are. And again, it doesn't have to be, you could drink once a month. You could drink every single night. That doesn't matter either. It's just if you want to change. If you can look at yourself, if I asked you, said, are you happy right now with your relationship with alcohol? You don't even have to answer back out loud. Just answer honestly to yourself. If it's yes, okay, cool. Go for it. I mean, that's great. You've figured out how to do what I never could. That's awesome and bravo. If it's even the slightest no, then I think it's worth taking a look at. And, for a guy who 2 years ago was all about the drinks, was about everything, the internet knows, right? So I'd be through there and all of a sudden a video would pop up about, are you an alcoholic? And I'm like, what? How did that show up? Nope. And you just start skipping them and all, right? And the moment I stopped and I started looking at those and admitting it to myself first, even if it took years for me to admit it out loud and say the words, I have to get sober. It started with me. And it was that moment of just being honest, of saying, my relationship with alcohol is not what I want it to be.
So
and I wasn't able to change it by moderating. So there's only one other step. And I want people to understand that, like, it's your journey. Do what you need to get through it. But there are so many tools. There's so much help out there. Hopefully I can be a resource. Hopefully this book can be a resource for people.
Yeah. What 3 gold stars would you leave our listeners with if they answered that question? Yes. What 3 things would you tell them?
Sobriety is not going to give you your old life back. It's going to give you the chance to build a new one. That would be one of them. You don't have to hit rock bottom. You just have to want to change. And then I had a third one I was thinking of. The other one, because it's becoming more and more usual, especially with incredible people like you and your podcast. You don't hear men talk the way that I'm talking, right? You barely do anymore. I think you're seeing a lot more of it. I think it's being more acceptable. Mental health, people are talking about it finally. People are getting help. But as a man, I'm telling you, the most important and powerful thing you can do is say that you need help from anyone. Don't worry about it. It doesn't make you any less of a man. It makes you a heck of a lot more of one. And for someone who grew up as kind of almost the female in the relationship, like, I have those types of traits and stuff. I'm the one that loves to cook. I'm the one that loves to plan parties and plan these Disney trips and all that type of stuff. Rhonda's like the breadwinner in the family. So when you look at these traditional families that grew up, when I was a kid, when nobody talked about mental health, nobody talked about therapy. ADHD was something that the hyper kid had that couldn't sit still in class and was loud and bad and got bad grades. Those are what I grew up with, and a lot of people grew up with, of what a man is you're stoic, you bring home the bacon, you work on cards and you drink whiskey. And being a man is not that. It is just saying you need help, that you can't do it on your own. And it's actually getting that help, I think, is just, it's more important than anything.
Oh, I love everything you're saying. It is so important that, like you said, that especially we have males talking about this. And we've had a few episodes in the last year of men being very vulnerable and talking about alcohol, talking about therapy, talking about all these things that have traditionally been very taboo to talk about. And so I'm just so grateful that you're putting it into, not just the podcast, but another avenue. People love reading books, and then they can hand it to someone without read it if you want, your choice. But, tangibly putting these stories into a book along with some data about alcohol, along with music, it's just such a beautiful way to kind of package it all together. So I cannot wait to read the full thing. But as you know, we always end every episode with Unleashing Ivy. So more questions we're curious about. And I'm curious about your relationship with Rhonda, putting myself in her shoes and thinking about, okay, there's this self-worth issue my husband has. How can I tell him he's awesome, build him up, because that's ultimately what sabotages this thing, is you not believing you're worthy of continuing this work. And so I'm curious, speaking to the Rhondas out there, whether it's yours or somebody else's, what can that partner do to help you with that self-esteem, with this whole process and journey?
Yeah, I think first is just, listen and understand, and it's like I said kind of earlier, like Rhonda's going to read things in this book that I never said to her out loud. And honestly, I don't know if I could, as weird as it sounds. It is one thing to say something to yourself. It's one thing to put it on paper, in an email, whatever. Like at that point you can delete it. But once it's out loud, it's there, and you're so vulnerable, and it's so much harder. So that's been hard for me, but she has been so open to listening. She accepts all of that. She tells me now so much, and maybe I'm only noticing it now, but she tells me how proud she is of things that I do. And, like I said, Rhonda's the breadwinner, right? She lets me live this crazy dream of, and I work for my brother, and that's like my main job. But, this dream of chasing this Disney podcast that I've been doing, and we just started doing more on YouTube. So I had to go out and get a camera, and I bought this t-shirt printing machine behind me, which if anybody wants to buy one, hit me up. I'll sell it to you for cheap. She supports these crazy little ADHD projects that I have and that I go for, and she does it in a smart way. She doesn't just let me run amok, but she supports the things that I get excited about, because she knows how important they are to me. And one thing that has changed, and I think, and she'll kind of admit this, again, we had a good relationship other than the alcohol part. But I think a lot of the reason, because there were plenty of times she said, next time that's it, I'll leave. And I think she stuck around for so long for the same reason it took so long for me to get sober, is that the work sounded harder than what you're currently doing. I think it just was easier for her just to live with it, you know? And we had gotten to some points where we were almost kind of like roommates. We were roommates that loved each other, but it was just like we lived in the same house. And so now she really listens. And every morning before she leaves for work and every day she gets home, and we hadn't done this, she gives me a kiss. And it's something so small that, again, for somebody who has trouble with that self-worth, who she's been with me for 20 years through every possible thing. And I'll tell you what, I'm an easy guy to like. I'm a really, really hard person to love. And I'm seeing it more and more. I mean, I sit back and I'm like, dang, like she should get an award for like loving me. You know, but she does. And she's that little affection, or that little token of affection, just that little kiss in the morning and at night now, is just like, wow.
Yeah.
Like she really does. The one thing I did not expect, and I've done some research, this does happen, is maybe it comes back. My sex drive took such a dive, which is one thing I did not read anywhere about sobriety. But I do understand now a lot of the rewiring of the brain, because your brain spends a long time rewiring itself. And even if, you know, you might think it's out of your system after X number of days, but it really isn't. So that was an interesting one. So I think, and then you go, well, we're 46, we've been married for 20 years. Is that life or is that sobriety of the way I feel? But, you know, but it's even one of those things that I kind of wish I'd known. And honestly, we haven't had a conversation about, you know, and it's something that I know we will, because now I feel like I can't. It's weird when she comes home and says, how was your day? I tell her now. Like I tell her and we talk and we have a conversation. And I don't have to wake up in the morning and be like, should I go in and say anything? Cause I don't know if I don't know. And even if that came out of just a Monday morning, she hated Monday mornings because that was coming out of our weekend of just doing things and going out and drinking. So it's that though. It's her just finally listening and understanding. When I started to tell her the inside thoughts that I had around drinking, I was so afraid she'd get like mad or angry. You know, how could you do this to me? Why wouldn't you tell me this all along? And instead her response was, wow, I'm so sorry. That's how you feel. And that meant more than anything. And probably the whole sobriety. It's her just understanding that all those years, you know, it was me, but it wasn't me. It was the addiction. It was the alcohol.
I think everything's easier. Everything's easier when you're honest, is what I'm hearing. Yeah. So my question, in one word, what can you do now that you're sober that you couldn't do when you were drinking?
Can I use 2 words?
Yes.
Enjoy life. Yeah. And if you had to put a little tagline, the way it was meant to be, you know, I thought I was enjoying life. I thought, hey, this is like the rock star lifestyle. I get to do whatever I want when I want. If I want to drink, I'll drink. I'm an adult. I don't care. This is awesome. And life is so much better now. And most days it doesn't feel like it. You know, there's not a moment, there's not a minute that goes by I don't think about alcohol. I don't think about drinking. I don't think about where I've been, what I have ahead of me, but that's life. And it's a hell of a lot better than the one I was living. So I'm just going to keep on trucking and do whatever I can and just continue to claw my way out of this thing, because it's worth it on the other side.
Is that what you would go back and tell drinking Jeremy, or would you tell him something different?
Yeah, that, and just, you can do it, but you literally can do it. Like, your life doesn't have to be this way. Yeah.
Wow. Well, thank you so much, Jeremy, for walking us through what you've been through, and that you were willing to do the work. Because I do think when you have that low self-esteem, like, you don't think you're capable of this, because it does sound hard. It does sound daunting, and it does require you to be vulnerable in ways that you probably have never been, and still are, because people are going to be reading this book, which I'm sure is like tearing your heart open and handing it to people.
Yeah, it is. Yeah.
So we're excited for this, but we can't wait to hear when it comes out. March 10th of 2026 is the date that it's supposed to come out. Yep. So we can't wait to hold it in our hands and share it with people, because it's going to ultimately save lives, that you were this vulnerable, that you are sharing. And I like that you're so honest about the suckiness of it sometimes, because like you said, on Instagram, you can see people like, oh, my life is so much better and I've lost all my, you know, like the
bull.
Yeah, right. And so I'm just so grateful that you're taking this time to talk about it, to write about it in your own way, with your own story. And I'm just so proud of you and grateful for this time.
Well, thank you. And I appreciate you guys having me on. I thought for years, and I just realized this recently, like I thought for years, like kind of the Disney podcast was kind of my purpose, and part of it is like, we enjoy helping people have a better vacation at Disney, save money, whatever it is. But I started this and I thought, you know what? I think this is it. Like, this is my purpose. This is why I'm here. You can believe in whatever kind of God you want. But mine, I always knew there was something more for me. It's the only reason I can figure out why I'm still here, why I didn't get DUIs, why I didn't end up in a ditch some nights. Is because I think there is a bigger purpose for me. And I think this is it. So I hope so. And if it helps one person, then it was worth it for me.
Well, think about that dad being more present with their kids at Disney.
Yeah.
Now that's the secret sauce, man.
Yep. And you use a lot of time hunting down that next Disney drink, because it's not like any lines there are short. So you're wasting even more time. So yeah, be present, be with your kids and all. And life is better on the other side. Trust me.
Yeah. Well, as you know, we wrap up every show with a piece of gold. Would you please send us off with yours?
So I want to have a quote from Scott Stapp, who is the lead singer of Creed, one of my all-time favorite bands. I've got tattoo on my back of their crest, and I'll read it just so I don't mess it up. Because he's been sober now for several years. He battled addiction. It broke up Creed originally. If you're a Creed fan, you know about the show in Chicago many, many years ago. But he has been sober for years now. And his quote was, "My sobriety is the most important thing in my life because everything else in my life is dependent upon my sobriety. Without that, I lose everything." And I couldn't put it in any better words. So I just went and decided to use his, because his words have spoke for me since basically 1997. So figured, why not let him speak for me now?
This is Gold Ivy signing off.
Listen to your truth and go chase your gold. We want to thank you and encourage you to celebrate yourself for taking the time to learn and get inspired in your one beautiful life. And if this podcast means something to you, it would mean so much to us if you'd be willing to take 30 seconds to help support our mission to keep bringing you inspiring stories and guests.
First, following the podcast is important because it helps you never miss an episode. To do this, just go to the Ivy Unleashed podcast show page on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you listen to podcasts, and then just tap the plus sign in the upper right-hand corner or click on follow.
While you're there, if you'd be so kind to give us a 5-star rating and review and share your favorite episode with a friend, we'd be so grateful for your support.
We are thrilled you're here and are so happy that you're taking time to prioritize your wellness, self-discovery, and growth with us. Additionally, we want to remind you that this podcast is presented solely for educational and entertainment purposes. We are not licensed therapists, and this podcast is not intended as a substitute for the advice of a physician, professional coach, psychotherapist, or other qualified professionals.